A lot of us learn the classic, dare I say, cliche Robert Johnson turnaround, and then that's it. We play that turnaround and we play it the same way every time. But what if you could take that one move and turn it into endless variations? You can tweak the rhythm, add some harmonies, throw in some flash, and suddenly you've got a ton more options. That's what I'm going to show you today. By the end of this lesson, you'll have 9 variations on the classic turnaround, ranging from some simple tweaks to some pretty cool and flashy moves. Let's dig in. First, let me show you the classic Robert Johnson turnaround. This is going to be the foundation everything else builds from. This is our basic turnaround, our platform that we're going to build some variations on top of. So let's make sure we understand it. We start with this triangle shape on the fretboard, and you can pick up your ring finger off of the first string. But I like to think of this as a little triangle just because it makes that shape on the fretboard, and you can play this with that finger down or not. You've probably heard it both ways, but we're picking through the top 3 strings with a triplet rhythm. 1, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. Right? Nice and in order and descending, as you notice, down the fretboard by 1 fret each time until we hit the top of the next measure. And we just play the top of an E major. That's an E major triad. There's our E, there's our G sharp, and there's our B. And we can just end this with a basic walk up on the 5th string, open 1st fret, 2nd fret into this B7, and then of course we can resolve back to E. That's our classic structure, and that's where we're going to start building from. Now, these variations that we're about to explore get a whole lot easier when your finger picking technique is taken care of. Your thumb is pumping out that steady bass and your fingers can move independently. You're going to be able to play these cleanly without thinking so much. And that's why I created the free Fingerpicking Quick Start Guide. It's got exercises specifically designed to train and build independence and control in your picking fingers so that you can focus on the creative side of what we're doing without fighting your fingers. Grab it at the link in the description. And now let's start by tweaking this classic turnaround. We're going to start simple. And I've got 3 foundational variations for you. Watch these first, and then we're going to break down what makes each one of them different. This group pays direct homage to that classic turnaround. You can hear the familiar structure behind each of them, and it's how we play with the rhythm really on these that makes them a solid variation from the original. Let's take a closer look at each of them. The first example simplifies things. We start out the same and we have the same structure for the turnaround, but we're not going to play in between the beats. We take our little mini shape here, the B on the 3rd string, 4th fret, and the D on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and move it down, but just on top of the beat. And finish basically the same with our little walk up into B7. Now, for the next variation, what we can do is take that and bring back our pedal tone. That's the open 1st string that we weave in between those beats. And right here, let's end with a triplet. We don't have to push the triplets to the side completely, but doing it all the time sounds maybe a little bit predictable. So we'll save that triplet for beat 4, and then we'll reverse the picking. We go 3rd string, open 1st, open 2nd. Then we can walk into our B7 just like before. And for the 3rd example, we're going to do something really cool with the rhythm here. We're going to kind of delay the start of that pedal tone, and we're going to bring in the 2nd string. So what we have is this. So we have this sort of quick pairing just before the next beat where we're going first string and second string, still keeping the structure the same. And you can bring on that bass string, the open 6th string. You can even palm mute it. And then, of course, we can walk up in a similar way. Here, I decided to get that G on the 6th string into the action because we can also play with that second measure, as you'll see in future examples. See how these small little tweaks with the timing give you a different sound? That's what we're looking for, and we're going to continue that, but this time we're going to look at some melodic tweaks by adding some lower and some higher harmonies that really add another layer to the basic turnaround. Harmony is the name of the game here. We're adding layers to help us go from predictable to a little more interesting. So let's take a closer look at how these harmonies work. For the 4th example, we're still going to pedal while moving this down a half step at a time as we resolve into that E major triad on the top 3 strings. But what's different here is we're also going to move down a half step at a time on the bass. The bass here being the D on the 5th fret of the 5th string. So use your ring finger to grab that, and we're going to pinch with the thumb and these 2 fingers, pedal and move down. Now when we get here on our way to this shape, the B on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and then that same triad on top, we're going to add a little embellishment. Sounds really cool. We're going to hammer up from the 2nd to the 3rd fret with the little finger and then pull off as we resolve down into that open position chord. All right? And then, of course, walk into our B7 any way you like. Now, our next example, number 5, has us going in a completely different direction, quite literally actually, because whatever we can do moving down, we can do moving up and have some fun with that. And that opens up a whole host of other variations here. But what we're going to do in this particular example is focus just on strings 3 and 1. So kind of keep that same triangle shape in mind, but this time we don't need the 2nd string, but we do need the 1st string. So here's what this one looks like. So we'll 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And notice here we've got a little bit of a different ending of the B7 part. But how we get there is climbing up before going back down. All right, and then that move on the B7 starts on that B, and then we pull off. So you got to sneak your ring finger under your middle finger there and pull off to the 1st fret on the 4th string. And let it ring a little bit because that's a chord tone, right? It's that D sharp here in that B7. And it sounds like a really slick way to to step into that B7. Our 6th variation is probably my favorite use of harmony. It can be a bit of a finger twister, so let's take a closer look at it. You might not notice this right off, but we still have elements of our classic turnaround here. We're starting on the 2nd string at the D and descending just like before, 1 fret at a time until we get to the open 2nd string. But what's really cool about this is the harmony layer that we're adding beneath that. So we're starting with our open 6th string, and then the bass actually ascends. It goes up from this G sharp. We switch to the open 5th string, but that's still going up by 1/2 step in pitch and then down again, and notice that I brought my index finger up to the B flat before we go to the B. And of course, giving ourselves a slick way to get in that B7. We've got one layer of harmony on top, moving down, so descending, and one ascending in the bass. To me, these harmony variations really open up the sound and they give a little bit of extra depth. But if you want to go a little bit further and get a little bit fancy, here are 3 variations that use the classic turnaround as that home base, but had a bit of creativity and a touch of flash. These are really cool. They're fun to use when you want to add that little bit of extra flash. Let's break down what's happening in each of these. You can see by now that we're using this classic turnaround as the heart of this, but we're embellishing it at each stop along the way with a little hammer-on pull-off with those quicker ones for beat 2 and 3. And then we kind of straighten up into a triplet rhythm for that final one on our way to our E major triad. And then from here, yet one more way to walk into our B7 chord. For our last 2, we're going to switch back to our harmonies on the 3rd and the 1st string, but we're going to add just a little bit of flash as we do. Let's take a look. And this is the heart of that move. You can tell we're really leaving that classic sound here, but the fingerings, the shape, and this overall area of the fretboard is still the genesis for where we are now. And with this one, we're sliding in while pinching these and adding that little rhythmic trick where we've got that quick move just before changing to the next beat. And what that is an open 1st string and then hammering back down at the 4th fret. And we're going to do that same move as we move down to the 2nd fret. And then abruptly, kind of really quickly slide into the 4th fret, and then we're ready to move down to our open position. Slightly different way to step ourselves into that B7. Now, example 8 sounds really bright and definitely more in the major sound. We really have to think about this as more of the position on the fretboard and kind of an evolution of where we came from, which is certainly more just inherently bluesy sound. But the point here in including this example is that we can take our regular, darker, bluesier, more minor pentatonic sounds and 7th chord sounds, and we don't have to do much to get into that major sound. And what we're going to do here for our final is blend the two just a little bit. We'll still have that nice bright sound of playing with the 3rd and the 1st string together, but we're going to slip into some minor pentatonicery here. Let's check it out. So we can see how the structure is very similar to what we were playing in example 8. We've got this same move here, but to finish us up and to kind of balance this real bright sound, I'm going to slide into the G note on the 1st string to give us that minor pentatonic sound. That G note is the minor third of E. And it gets us a little more into that bluesy world. And so does this move. When we slide or move ourselves up to the 4th fret and slide down really quickly to the 2nd, all along the 3rd string. Pull off, and really just stepping ourselves kind of back down into our B7. Having a ton of turnarounds at your fingertips is great, and you should definitely do that as a blues player. And now, hopefully you can see how you can make even small tweaks to the most basic turnaround, create something unique. But here's the thing. You have to have the core finger picking movements down cold to make them sound good. So watch Tuesday Blues number 503 next to learn these foundational movements so everything else falls into place. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.